One summer, my friends Michael and Thomas and I decided we wanted to try out an amusement park in a city about 2 hours away. It was called Black Hawk Park. The park had recently gotten a lot of new rides, and everyone at school was talking about how much fun the new roller coasters were. I was a thrill seeker myself, and tended to not get very scared when it came to roller coasters, so I was intrigued by the thought of a ride that might be scary enough to shake me up a little. We left early in the morning so we could be sure to have plenty of time to try every single ride in the park. We had barely pulled into the parking lot when we could hear the screams of terror coming from those inside the park riding the roller coasters. My friends and I looked at each other with excitement before heading inside to grab our tickets. We all decided to skip straight to the roller coasters so we would be sure to get them all in. Our first choice was the Black Widow. It was a terrifying ride in which we were suspended midair, held upside down, and did several loops. I had to bite my lip a little to keep from screaming. It was an amazing ride. We went from coaster to coaster, having the time of our lives. Luckily, the lines weren't too bad, and by noon we had already been on 6 or 7 roller coasters. The one I was most excited about was called the Monorail. It was built similar to a train track with multiple cars that fit 4 people at a time. The cars would shoot forward into a dark cave and out into an area of water. Out of all the attractions at the park, this one was one of the most popular and talked about. My friends and I agreed that the monorail should be our next attraction, so we got in line and waited for a car to be available so all 3 of us could get seated together. We ended up in our own car, Michael Thomas in the front and me in the back with an empty seat next to me. We were strapped in and our safety bars were locked into place. We were giggling nervously with anticipation. "This is going to be a maze," I began, but couldn't finish my sentence as our car was shot forward at what felt like lightning speed. We whizzed into the cave, shooting through dimly lit tunnels. Suddenly, our car jolted, and at first, I thought it caught on something on the rail. Before I had a chance to look over the side of the car to figure out what was going on, we had shuddered to a halt. The lights inside the tunnel flickered before going out completely. "What's going on?" Michael asked. "I don't think this is part of the ride. I think something malfunctioned," I said. We were in complete darkness. Even though the ride attendant had suggested that I keep my phone in a locker rather than taking it with me on the ride, I was glad that I had it slipped in my pocket. I took it out and tried to think of who to call. I pulled up the amusement park's website and scrolled down trying to find a contact for the emergency line. Before I could even process my thoughts, our car was slammed violently from behind, causing my head to slam forward onto the seats in front of me, so hard that I saw stars. Even though my head was muddled, I could hear screams from in front of me and behind me. I realized that we had been hit by a car coming at full speed behind us. I glanced back, and from the light of my phone, I saw that there were 4 teenage girls in the car. One of the girls in the front of the car was badly injured. There was a laceration across her forehead, and her nose and lip were bleeding heavily. The girl next to her looked completely disoriented, like she didn't know where she was or what had happened. I suspected she had probably hit her head hard enough to get a concussion. Everyone else was screaming and crying. "We're sitting ducks! It's only a matter of time before the next one comes," Michael shouted, shaking me out of my shock. I knew he was right and every second counted right now. "Call 911, I screamed, handing him my phone. I then struggled to get my jacket off, which was a near impossible task due to the safety bar in place. After a lot of wiggling, I managed to get it off and hand it to the girl with the bloody nose. "Press it to your face," I told her, trying to get her to stifle the bleeding. My jacket was white, and I couldn't believe how quickly it became saturated with the girl's blood. I had gotten my fair share of bloody noses in my day playing football with my friends. Had there been that much blood then? I didn't think so. I then turned to Michael, who was desperately trying to explain our situation to the 911 operator. "Tell them to stop the ride. We've got people injured in here," he said breathlessly. "Tell them to send paramedics. There's a girl who's lost a lot of blood and she needs help fast," I told him. My heart pounded as I continued to look over my shoulder to see if another car was heading our way. My phone's light was only bright enough to illuminate a few meters back, and I could see nothing coming in the dark tunnel. Maybe the ride operator had realized something was wrong when our car didn't emerge from the cave when it should have and stopped the ride. My hopes were dashed when I felt another violent push from behind me, and more screams rang out. This time the car behind us took the brunt of the hit, so my car wasn't shoved as hard. But Michael was holding the phone in his hand as he talked to the 911 operator, so he hadn't been able to brace himself for the hit. His lip was split open and blood ran down his face, but he remained calm as he continued to update the operator on our extremely dangerous situation. It was too dark to see how the people were in the car in the far back, but I was most worried about the girl in the front seat of the car behind us, who was now slumped over and appeared to be unconscious. Her friend was shaking and trying to wake her up, and screaming her name frantically, tears running down her cheeks. "Don't worry, we're calling for help," I told them. We were on what I believed to be the top of a slope. If one more car came from behind, then it would likely be just enough of a push to send us all cascading down at the same time. This would be incredibly dangerous and people would likely get crushed in the process. My heart began beating faster and faster as I realized we could all die today. "What are they telling you?" I asked Michael, whose face appeared focused, hanging on every word that the operator was telling him. He didn't answer me. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on and our car began moving forward while the cars behind us stayed stationary. At a much slower speed, the car continued down the slope and out of the cave. I had never been more grateful to see daylight in my entire life. The car went through a water area, causing us to get slightly splashed before reaching its resting point back at the beginning of the ride. We were greeted by a team of paramedics and a crowd of people watching. People were snapping photos and gasping as they took note of our injuries. We were helped out of the car and put into ambulances before being rushed to the nearest hospital, where all three of us had to stay overnight. We found out I had a slight concussion and would have to stay an extra night for observation. Michael had to get several stitches for his lip and had some pretty gnarly bruises. Thomas had some pretty intense whiplash from being lurched forward, but was mostly okay. On my second day in the hospital, a girl was pushed into the room in a wheelchair. I recognized her immediately. It was the girl from the front seat of the car that had been behind us. She had a black eye and stitches lined the top of her face. She looked pretty beaten up but was smiling. She had wanted to thank me for giving her my jacket during the crash. She said that the doctors had told her that if she lost any more blood, she could have been in a very serious condition, and the jacket could have even saved her life. The girl told me that the three friends that were with her on the ride were banged up, but were going to pull through. Everyone was expected to make a lasting recovery. She didn't have any news about the people in the car behind us, but said that she heard from a police officer that there were 11 people involved in the crash, which had something to do with faulty wiring. The ride was currently out of order as mechanics worked to find out the source of the problem. It's been a few months now, and the amusement park has seen a major decrease in visitors. They even had to drop their ticket price. My parents and my friends all got lawyers, and there is currently a major lawsuit going on against the park. There are millions of dollars at stake. It was a pretty traumatizing experience, but who knows? Maybe I'll get some money out of it to help pay for college. Despite the nightmare we all went through, I still have a love of roller coasters. I'll probably go back to an amusement park one day when the trauma of the experience doesn't bother me as much. But one thing is for sure, I'm never going back to Black Hawk. What would you have done in this situation? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, sleep tight.